Princess Kira Lin stood at the observation window of her royal cruiser, watching the human ships arrive through the jump gate. Each vessel looked rough and ugly compared to the elegant curves of Valkyrian design. The humans built their ships like weapons, all sharp angles and heavy armor. It disgusted her. "They look like flying scrap metal," she said to her advisor, Commander Vel'Thas, who stood beside her. "They are barbarians, Your Highness," Vel'Thas replied with a sneer. The council made a mistake, forcing this alliance. Kira Lin agreed completely. Her people, the Valkyrians, had existed for thousands of years. They were telepathic, graceful, and cultured. Humans had barely left their own planet a few centuries ago. They were violent, crude, and simple-minded. The stories she had heard growing up painted them as dangerous animals who solved every problem with guns and explosions. But the Scourge had changed everything. The alien swarm was sweeping across the galaxy, destroying entire worlds. The Galactic Council decided that every species needed to work together to survive. That meant Kira Lin, as a royal military liaison, had to coordinate with the human fleet. The thought made her skin crawl. Her communicator beeped. "Princess Kira Lin, Captain Jake Sullivan of the human destroyer, Valiant Dawn, is requesting permission to board for the briefing." She wanted to refuse, but duty came first. Permission granted. Have him escorted to the strategy room. 20 minutes later, Kira Lin entered the strategy room with her full entourage. She wore her formal military robes, designed to show her status and authority. She expected the human captain to be impressed, or at least intimidated. Instead, Jake Sullivan stood casually by the holographic display, examining the star charts. He wore a simple uniform with various patches and medals, but nothing fancy. His brown hair was slightly messy, and he had a scar along his jaw. When she entered, he looked up and nodded. "Princess," he said simply. "Not even a proper bow." "Captain Sullivan," she replied coldly. "I trust you understand the importance of following Valkyrian tactical protocols during this operation." Jake raised an eyebrow. "I understand we're here to fight the Scourge. That's what matters." 9. Kira Lin felt her temper rising. What matters is military discipline and proper coordination. Human recklessness has cost lives in previous engagements, and Valkyrian hesitation has cost colonies, Jake shot back calmly. "We can trade blame all day, or we can focus on the mission." Several of Kira Lin's officers gasped at his tone. No one spoke to royalty that way. But Jake seemed completely unfazed. He pulled up a tactical display, showing the Scourge positions near the Helios Nebula. "They've been gathering here for 3 days, Jake explained. "My scouts report at least 40 capital ships. We need to hit them before they finish organizing." "Rush in blindly?" Kira Lin said with disdain. "That is exactly the kind of primitive thinking I expected. We should establish proper reconnaissance first, develop a calculated strategy, and strike when we have superior positioning. By then, they'll have reinforcements," Jake countered. "The Scourge don't wait for us to be ready. They adapt, and they move fast. Perhaps if humans spent more time thinking and less time shooting, fewer people would die," Kira Lin said sharply. Jake's expression hardened slightly. "Princess, I've lost good people in this war. People with families, dreams, and futures. Don't lecture me about death when you're standing in a fancy ship surrounded by servants." The room went silent. Kira Lin felt fury building in her chest. How dare this primitive human speak to her this way? But something in his eyes stopped her from lashing out. There was pain there, and exhaustion. He had seen real combat, real loss. "We will follow a modified approach," she said stiffly. "Reconnaissance probes first, then a coordinated strike, using both our tactical methods. Agreed?" "Agreed," Jake said. The briefing continued for another hour. Jake's tactical knowledge was surprisingly solid, though Kira Lin would never admit it out loud. His suggestions were aggressive, but not suicidal. He clearly cared about protecting his crew and accomplishing the mission. Still, she kept her distance and her cold demeanor. When the meeting ended, Jake headed for the door. Before leaving, he turned back. "Princess, I know you don't like us. I get it. Our species don't have the best history, but we're here, and we're not backing down from this fight." Why? Kira Lin found herself asking. Why did humans even agree to help? Your people have been treated poorly by the Council for decades, Jake shrugged. Because it's the right thing to do. The Scourge don't care about politics or grudges. They'll kill everyone if we let them. Someone has to stand up and fight, so here we are. He left before she could respond. Lady Sarah Lin, Kira Lin's childhood friend and advisor, approached quietly. "He is not what I expected. He is still human," Kira Lin said dismissively. "Rough, disrespectful, and overly direct. But honest," Sarah Lin observed. "And perhaps braver than we give them credit for." Kira Lin turned away from her friend, looking out the window at the human ships again. They were ugly. Yes, crude and brutish. But they were here, ready to fight and die alongside species that looked down on them. She pushed the thoughts away. It did not matter. After this campaign, she would return to Velcara Prime and never have to deal with humans again. This alliance was temporary. Her opinion of them would not change. At least, that is what she told herself. In the hangar bay, Jake walked back to his shuttle. His second officer, Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, was waiting for him. "How did it go, sir?" Amy asked. "About as well as expected," Jake replied. "She hates us." "Most of them do," Amy said with a sigh. "Can't say I blame them. We are kind of loud and messy compared to the Velcarians." Jake smiled slightly. "Yeah, but we're also still breathing and fighting. That counts for something." As his shuttle departed the royal cruiser, Jake looked back at the elegant ship. Somewhere inside, a princess was probably complaining about having to work with humans. He did not take it personally. Prejudice took time to overcome. And time was something they did not have much of. The Scourge were coming. Ready or not, humans and Velcarians would have to fight together. And maybe, just maybe, they would learn something about each other along the way. The ambush came without warning. The combined fleet had been moving through the Helios Nebula when Scourge ships emerged from the swirling clouds of gas and dust. Dozens of them, all firing at once. Kira Lin gripped the arms of her command chair as her cruiser shuddered from weapons impacts. "Shields. At 70%, her tactical officer reported. "Enemy numbers confirmed. At 42 capital ships. Pull back to defensive formation Alpha," Kira Lin ordered. "Have our frigates provide covering fire." But the Scourge were not following normal battle patterns. They swarmed like insects, overwhelming individual ships before moving to the next target. Velcarian ships were built for elegant, long-range combat. This chaotic, close-quarters fighting was not their strength. On the view screen, Kira Lin watched a Velcarian destroyer explode in a flash of blue light. Hundreds of lives gone in an instant. Her hands trembled with rage and fear. "Your Highness. 3 Scourge cruisers are breaking through our line," Commander Velthas said urgently. "They are heading directly for us." "Evasive maneuvers," Kira Lin commanded. "Reroute all power to forward shields." The ship turned, but it was too slow. The first Scourge weapons struck like hammers. Alarms blared throughout the bridge. Panels sparked and exploded. One officer was thrown from her station. "Shields failing," the tactical officer shouted. "We cannot take another volley like that." Kira Lin watched the enemy ships approaching for the killing blow. Her mind raced through options, but none of them were good. They were going to die here. Then a shadow passed over them. The human destroyer, Valiant Dawn, positioned itself directly between the princess's cruiser and the enemy. Its heavy armor took the full force of the Scourge attack. Explosions rippled across its hull. "What is he doing?" Velthas gasped. Jake's voice crackled over the communication channel. "Princess, Get your ship out of here. We will hold them off. Jakes. 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 Your vessel cannot survive that kind of punishment, Kira Lin said, shocked. That's our problem to worry about, Jake replied. She could hear alarms in the background on his bridge. Amy. Give them everything we have got. Danny. I want those boarding parties ready, in case they try to come alongside us. The Valiant Dawn's guns roared to life. Unlike the precise energy beams of Valkyrian weapons, human guns fired solid projectiles and explosive missiles. It was crude and violent, but effective. 2 Scourge cruisers broke off their attack, damaged and retreating. The third one got through. It slammed into the Valiant Dawn's side, tearing open a massive hole in the hull. Kira Lin watched in horror as sections of the human ship vented atmosphere into space. Sullivan, your ship is dying, she said. Evacuate your crew. Not until you are clear, Jake said firmly. Through the video feed, she could see blood running down his face from a head wound. Behind him, crew members were frantically trying to seal hull breaches. Now, move your ship, Princess. That is an order. You cannot order me. Right now, I can, Jake interrupted. Military emergency supersedes rank protocols. Move. Your ship. Kira Lin wanted to argue, but she had no good response. She gave the order, and her cruiser limped away from the battle zone. Behind them, the Valiant Dawn continued fighting, covering their retreat. The battle lasted 3 more hours. By the end, the Scourge had been driven off. But the cost was terrible. 15 ships destroyed, thousands dead. The Valiant Dawn survived, but barely. It would need months of repairs. Kira Lin insisted on visiting the human ship personally. When she arrived, she was shocked by what she saw. Entire sections were open to space, sealed off by temporary force fields. Crew members worked around the clock, welding patches and rerouting systems. The air smelled like smoke and burned metal. Jake met her in the damaged hangar bay. He had a bandage on his head and looked exhausted, but he still stood straight. Why did you do that? Kira Lin demanded. You risked your entire crew for my ship. Because that is what allies do, Jake said simply. We protect each other, but we are not truly allies, Kira Lin said. My people have treated yours with contempt for years. We mock you, exclude you from councils, and call you primitives. Why would you sacrifice your people for us? Jake looked at her with those tired eyes. Because the alternative is letting good people die. I do not care about politics or old grudges. I care about doing what is right. Kira Lin had no response. She had expected humans to be selfish and violent. This selfless courage confused her. Over the next few days, she found herself observing the human crew more closely. She watched Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez coordinate rescue operations for Valkyrian pilots, whose ships had been damaged. Amy worked for 18 hours straight, refusing to rest until every pilot was accounted for. When Kira Lin asked why she cared so much, Amy smiled sadly. My brother died 3 months ago. Friendly fire from a Valkyrian ship during a confused battle. I could hate your people for that, but hate does not bring him back. It just makes more people die. Kira Lin also saw Sergeant Danny Wright in the medical bay, sharing his rations with wounded Valkyrian soldiers. He made jokes and tried to lift their spirits, even though some of them still looked at him with suspicion. Why are you being kind to us? One young Valkyrian soldier asked Danny. Because you are hurt and scared, Danny replied with a shrug. Same as anyone would be. Does not matter where you are from. That night, Kira Lin attended a strategy meeting with Jake and the other commanders. They were planning their next move against the Scourge. Jake proposed an aggressive strike on an enemy supply base. That is too risky, Kira Lin argued. We should fortify our positions and wait for reinforcements. Waiting gives them time to rebuild, Jake countered. We need to keep them off balance. You fight like you have nothing to lose, Kira Lin accused him. Jake's expression hardened. No. We fight like we have everything to protect. There is a difference. Explain it to me then, Kirillin demanded. Explain why humans are so willing to throw themselves into danger. Jake was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. Because we know what it is like to have everything taken away. Earth's history is full of wars, disasters, and near extinctions. We have been knocked down more times than I can count. But we always get back up. Not because we are fearless, because we are too stubborn to quit. He pulled up an image on the holographic display. It showed a human city, rebuilt after some terrible war. That is New Chicago. It was destroyed 3 times. 3 times, humans came back and rebuilt it. That is who we are. We do not give up. Ever. Kirillin stared at the image. She had never thought about human history that way. She had always seen them as violent and aggressive. But maybe that violence came from a desperate need to survive, to protect what they loved. Your persistence is admirable, she admitted quietly. Perhaps I have underestimated humans. Most people do, Jake said with a slight smile. As Kirillin returned to her ship that night, she realized something had changed inside her. The humans were still crude and rough, but they were also brave, loyal, and surprisingly compassionate. They risked everything for people who looked down on them. Maybe, she thought, there was more to humanity than the stories had told her. Maybe she needed to look closer and see them for who they really were. And maybe, just maybe, her hatred had been built on lies and fear rather than truth. The alert came in the middle of the night cycle. The Scourge had launched a massive assault on New Meridian, a colony world shared by humans and Valkyrians. Thousands of civilians were in danger. Kirillin immediately volunteered to lead the ground defense. It was her duty as a princess to protect her people. What she did not expect was Jake volunteering to join her. With respect, Captain, your place is on your ship, Kirillin said. My orders say otherwise, Jake replied, holding up a datapad. Command wants me as your protection detail on the ground. They think having both human and Valkyrian leaders visible will boost morale. Kirillin wanted to argue, but she could not dispute direct orders. So she found herself on a transport ship, heading to the surface with Jake, 4 human Marines, and 6 Valkyrian guards. The Marines included Corporal Lisa Hayes and Private Kyle Bennett, both young but experienced soldiers. The landing was rough. Scourge fighters swarmed the sky, and ground fire was intense. Their transport took several hits before crash landing on the outskirts of a settlement. Everyone out, Jake shouted. Move, move, move. They scrambled from the burning wreckage just before it exploded. Kirillin's ears were ringing from the blast. Smoke filled her lungs. Around them, the colony was burning. Buildings collapsed. Civilians screamed in the distance. We need to reach the command bunker, Kirillin said, pulling up a map on her wrist device. It is 3 kilometers northeast. That is on the other side of the Scourge landing zone, Lisa pointed out. We will never make it through their lines. Then we go around, Jake said, studying the terrain. Through the industrial sector. It will take longer, but give us cover. They moved quickly through the ruins. Scourge scouts were everywhere, searching for survivors. The group had to hide several times, pressing themselves into shadows as alien patrols passed by. On the second day, they ran into a Scourge ambush. Kyle took a hit to his leg, the alien weapon burning through his armor. He collapsed with a cry of pain. Kyle, Lisa shouted, rushing to his side. Scourge warriors were closing in from both sides. Jake and the others laid down covering fire. Lisa, get him up. We need to move now. He cannot walk, sir, Lisa said desperately. Then carry him, Jake ordered. We are not leaving anyone behind. Lisa hauled Kyle onto her back. He was much larger than her, but she carried him anyway, staggering under the weight. The group fought their way out of the ambush. leaving dead Scourge behind them. For hours, Lisa carried Kyle through the ruins. Kira Lynn watched in amazement. The young woman never complained, never asked for a break. She just kept moving, one foot in front of the other, even when exhaustion made her shake. "Why not leave him?" one of Kira Lynn's guards asked quietly. "He slows us down." "Because that is not what we do," Jake said firmly. "Every person matters. Every life is worth saving." That night, they took shelter in the basement of a collapsed building. Kyle's wound was infected. He was feverish and barely conscious. Lisa sat beside him, holding his hand and talking to him softly. Kira Lynn approached Jake, who was keeping watch by the entrance. "Your people are loyal to each other." "We have to be," Jake said. "We are all we have got sometimes." "The Valkyrians value individual perfection," Kira Lynn admitted. "We are taught to be strong alone. But you're humans. You are strong together. Both have merit," Jake said. "But I will take a loyal friend over a perfect stranger any day." On the third day, their situation grew desperate. They were out of ammunition for most weapons. Food and water were running low. Scourge patrols were getting closer. They still had 2 kilometers to go. Then Kira Lynn herself was wounded. A Scourge bioweapon struck her shoulder, the alien toxins spreading through her body. She collapsed, feeling her limbs go numb. "Leave me," she gasped. "Get to the command bunker. I will only slow you down." "Not happening," Jake said, slinging her arm over his shoulder. "I can limp, sir," Kyle said, his fever broken, but legs still badly hurt. "Good enough. Let us move." Jake carried Kira Lynn through the ruins. Every step must have been exhausting for him, but he never faltered. When Scourge scouts appeared, he set her down, fought them off, then picked her up again. "Why?" Kira Lynn whispered weakly. "Why not save yourself?" "Because I do not leave people behind," Jake said simply. "Friend or not, human or alien, does not matter. You are hurt and need help. That is all I need to know." Through her fever haze, Kira Lynn felt something crack inside her. All her life, she had been taught that humans were selfish and brutal. But here was Jake, risking his life for someone who had openly hated him. Here was Lisa, carrying a wounded comrade for days. Here was Kyle, walking on a ruined leg because his team needed him. They were not perfect. They were rough and crude, and sometimes too aggressive. But they were also brave and loyal, and willing to die for each other, for anyone on their team. Finally, they reached the command bunker. Valkyrian and human forces were holding the position, preparing for a final stand. Medical teams rushed forward to help Kyle and Kira Lynn. As the doctors worked on her wound, Kira Lynn watched Jake through the doorway. He was already back at work, helping organize the defense. His uniform was torn and bloody. He had not slept in 3 days. But he kept going because people needed him. Lady Sarah Lynn appeared beside Kira Lynn's medical bed. "The human captain saved your life." "I know," Kira Lynn whispered. "He saved all of us. Multiple times. And you were wrong about humans," Sarah Lynn said gently. "We both were." Kira Lynn nodded slowly. The toxin made it hard to think clearly. But one thing was certain. She had spent years hating humans, based on stories and prejudice. But stories were not truth, and prejudice was not wisdom. She had seen humanity's real face now. Not in fancy council chambers or political debates, but on a battlefield, covered in blood and dirt, fighting for every step. That was where truth lived. "I need to speak with Jake," Kira Lynn said, trying to sit up. "Rest first," Sarah Lynn urged. "He will still be here later." But Kira Lynn shook her head. Some things could not wait. She had spent too long being wrong. She needed to start making it right. When Jake finally took a break, she called him over to her bed. He looked concerned. "Better, thanks to your stubbornness," she said, managing a weak smile. Jake, I owe you an apology. I was wrong about your people. About you. You are not primitives or barbarians. You are extraordinary. Jake looked surprised. Then he smiled that tired smile of his. We are just people doing our best. Same as you. No, Kirillin said firmly. You are more than that. You have something my people lost. You have hope. Even when everything looks impossible, you keep fighting. Keep believing. Keep protecting each other. She paused, gathering her strength. Thank you. For not leaving me. For not giving up. Anytime, Princess, Jake said. Then, more softly, actually, just Kirillin is fine. I think we are past titles now. Kirillin felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the fever. Then call me Kira. Kira, Jake repeated, testing the name. I like it. Something passed between them in that moment. An understanding. A connection forged in fire and survival. The hatred was gone. Burned away by 3 days of shared struggle. In its place was something new. Something neither of them had expected. Respect. Trust. And perhaps the beginnings of something more. The intelligence report arrived 2 weeks after the battle on New Meridian. Kirillin was still recovering from her injuries when Commander Vel'Thas brought her the data. Your Highness? You need to see this, he said grimly. Our scouts have detected a massive scourge fleet gathering near the border. Their target appears to be Velkara Prime. Kirillin felt her blood turn cold. Velkara Prime was her homeworld. Billions of people lived there, including her family. How long until they attack? How long until they attack? Take 6 days, maybe 7, Vel'Thas replied. We have already sent word to the Galactic Council requesting support, but when the Council convened, the debate was bitter. Many species argued that defending Velkara Prime was not worth the cost. The Velkarians had been isolationist for centuries, refusing to help others during their times of need. Now they expected everyone to rush to their aid. Why should we risk our fleets? Demanded the Krovan ambassador. The Velkarians would not do the same for us. They have always seen themselves as superior, added the Talon representative. Kirillin watched the proceedings from her recovery room, feeling helpless and angry. They were going to let her homeworld burn because of past pride and mistakes. Then Jake stood up at the council table. He was not supposed to speak at these high-level meetings, but he did anyway. With respect to this council, you are making a terrible mistake, Jake said. His voice was calm but firm. Yes, the Velkarians have been difficult allies in the past. Yes, they have looked down on many of us. But that does not mean we should abandon billions of innocent people. Why should humans care? The Krovan ambassador challenged. Your species has suffered more insults from the Velkarians than anyone. Because we are better than that, Jake replied. Because becoming like the Scourge, deciding some lives matter less than others, that is how we lose our humanity. The Velkarians were wrong about us. Let us prove we are nothing like what they believed. Other human commanders stood up to support him. Admiral Patricia Cole spoke about military strategy and how losing Velkara Prime would give the Scourge a staging ground for deeper attacks. Captain Derek Martinez talked about the civilian population and the moral duty to protect them, but it was Jake's words that stuck with Kirillin. He was not just arguing for military reasons. He was arguing because it was right, because even after everything, he believed in protecting people who had treated him poorly. The council eventually agreed to send a defense fleet, but it was smaller than needed. Many species sent only token forces. The Velkarians would be facing this battle mostly alone. Jake found Kirillin in the garden area of the medical station. She was standing by a window, looking at the stars toward her homeworld. We will be there in time, Jake said quietly. I promise. Your fleet is damaged, Kirillin said. The Valiant Dawn is still being repaired. You do not have to go. Yes, we do, Jake said firmly. That is what friends do. Kirillin turned to look at him. Friends? Is that what we are now? Friends? I thought so, Jake said, looking uncertain for the first time. Unless I misread the situation. No, Kirillin said softly. You did not misread it. We are friends. I am just surprised. What changed? Jake asked. Kirillin thought about the answer. About watching Lisa carry Kyle through the ruins. About Jake refusing to leave her behind. About Danny sharing his rations with wounded soldiers. About every small act of courage and kindness she had witnessed. I was taught that humans were violent and selfish, she said slowly. That you solved everything with force and cared only about yourselves. But that was a lie. Or at least, it was not the whole truth. She stepped closer to Jake. You are violent, yes, but your violence protects the weak. You are aggressive, but your aggression fights for those who cannot fight for themselves. You are imperfect, but you try anyway. You fail, but you get back up. You are hurt, but you still care. We have our flaws, Jake admitted. Everyone does, Kirillin said. But my people. We spent so long pursuing perfection that we forgot how to be real. We became cold, distant. We lost the ability to connect with others. She reached out and took Jake's hand. It felt rough and calloused. Nothing like the smooth hands of Valkyrian nobles. But it felt real and warm. You taught me something important, she continued. Perfection is not about never making mistakes. It is about getting back up when you fall. About caring, even when it hurts. About fighting for what is right, even when it is hard. Jake squeezed her hand gently. You are giving us too much credit. We just do what we think is right. Number 4. Censure subscribe. Number 4. And he wanted the crest his no to Onassis. That is exactly why you deserve credit, Kirillin said. You do the right thing without expecting praise or recognition. You help people who hate you. You fight for those who look down on you. That takes more courage than any battle. They stood there in silence for a moment. Hands clasped. Looking at the stars. Kira, Jake said finally. When this is over, when the war ends, what happens to us? It was a question Kirillin had been avoiding. A human captain and a Valkyrian princess. Their relationship would be seen as scandalous by many. It would cause problems and complications. But as she looked into Jake's eyes, she realized she did not care about the complications. I do not know, she admitted. But I want to find out. Together, Jake smiled. That genuine smile that made his tired face look younger. Together sounds good. The next few days were a blur of preparation. The fleet gathered, smaller than anyone wanted but still formidable. The Valiant Dawn was rushed through repairs. Not fully fixed but space-worthy. Jake worked constantly, coordinating with other commanders and planning the defense strategy. Kirillin worked alongside him. They developed a battle plan that combined Valkyrian precision with human aggression. Her elegant tactics provided structure. His bold maneuvers provided surprise. Together, they created something neither species could have done alone. The night before the battle, Kirillin found Jake on the observation deck of his ship. He was staring at a photograph. When she approached, he showed it to her. My family, he explained. My sister and her kids. They live on a border colony. I fight so they do not have to. They must be proud of you, Kirillin said. I hope so, Jake replied. Though mostly I just hope they stay safe. Kirillin understood that feeling. She was fighting for her family too. For her father, the Emperor. For her people. But she was also fighting for something else now. For the future. For the chance to build something better than the past. Jake, she said quietly. If something happens tomorrow. Nothing is going to happen, Jake interrupted firmly. But if it does, Kirillin insisted. I want you to know that meeting you changed my life. You showed me that I was wrong. That my hatred was built on fear and lies. You gave me hope that different species can truly understand each other. Jake turned to face her fully. Kira, I am not good with words like you are. But you changed my life too. You showed me that even the deepest prejudice can be overcome. That understanding is possible if people are willing to try. He hesitated, then continued. And you made me believe that maybe, when this war is over, we can build something better. Not just between our species, but between us. Kiralyn felt her heart pounding. She knew what he meant. What they both meant. It was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. Then we better survive tomorrow, she said, trying to sound confident. Deal. They stood together on the observation deck, watching the stars. Tomorrow, they would face the biggest battle of their lives. Tomorrow, everything could change. But tonight, they had each other. And that was enough. The Battle of Velcara Prime began at dawn. The Scourge fleet emerged from hyperspace like a dark cloud. Over 200 warships, strong. Alarms blared across every defending vessel. Kiralyn stood on the bridge of her command cruiser, now fully repaired. Jake was on the Valiant Dawn, positioned in the center of the human battle group. They were connected by an open communication channel, coordinating their forces. Remember the plan, Kiralyn said calmly. Velcarian ships form the outer perimeter. Hold them at range with our long-range weapons. Human ships wait for my signal, then punch through their center formation. Waiting is not our strong suit, Jake replied, but she could hear the smile in his voice. But for you, we will be patient. The Scourge attacked in waves, testing the defenses. Velcarian ships fired their elegant beam weapons, cutting through enemy shields with surgical precision. But there were so many Scourge ships. For every one they destroyed, 2 more took its place. They are trying to overwhelm our flanks, Commander Velthos reported. We cannot hold much longer. Now, Jake, Kiralyn ordered. Execute strike pattern Beta. The human fleet surged forward. They did not move in neat formations like the Velcarians. They moved like a pack of wolves, fast and aggressive. The Valiant Dawn led the charge. Its guns blazing. Jake's voice came over the channel. All ships, focus fire on their command carriers. Hit them hard and fast. Human missiles and projectile weapons smashed into the Scourge center. It was not elegant, but it was devastatingly effective. The enemy formation shattered. Confused by the sudden assault, Kiralyn immediately ordered her ships to adjust. Press the advantage. All frigates, support the human advance. Destroyers, watch their flanks. For the next 3 hours, the battle raged. Velcarian precision and human aggression worked together perfectly. When the Scourge tried to surround human ships, Velcarian forces provided covering fire. When the Velcarians needed time to recharge their weapons, human ships drew enemy attention. But the cost was terrible. Ships exploded on both sides. Thousands of lives were lost with every passing minute. The orbital platforms around Velcara Prime were taking heavy damage. Then the Scourge flagship appeared. A massive dreadnought that dwarfed every other ship in the battle. It began firing on the planet's surface, targeting cities directly. We have to stop that ship, Jake said urgently. It is going to kill millions. It has shields too strong for our weapons, Kiralyn replied desperately. We cannot break through. Then we ram it, Jake said simply. What? Kiralyn felt her blood go cold. Jake? That is suicide. It is a chance, Jake countered. If I can position the Valiant Dawn to hit their main reactor, the explosion should take out the flagship. Your ships can handle the rest of the fleet after that. No, Kiralyn said firmly. I forbid it. There has to be another way. There is not, Jake said quietly. You know it as well as I do. This is the only shot we have. On her view screen, Kiralyn watched the Scourge flagship fire again. An entire city district vanished in fire and smoke. Billions of people were counting on them. Her people. Her world. But Jake was one person. One man who had taught her what real courage meant. One man she had come to care about more than she ever expected. Jake, please, she whispered. Do not do this. I have to, Jake said. His voice was sad but certain. This is what we do. Remember? We protect people, no matter the cost. He was already turning his ship toward the flagship. Kira Lin watched in horror as the Valiant Dawn accelerated, heading straight for the enemy dreadnought. All crew, evacuate now, Jake ordered his people. Amy, make sure everyone gets to the escape pods. That is an order. Sir, you need to evacuate too, Amy protested. Someone has to pilot the ship, Jake replied. Go. That is my final order. Escape pods began launching from the Valiant Dawn. But Jake stayed on the bridge, guiding his damaged ship toward the target. The Scourge flagship fired at him, but he dodged and weaved through the weapons fire with incredible skill. Kira Lin made a decision. She could not let him die alone. She reached for the emergency transporter, the forbidden Valkyrian technology that could move people across vast distances. It was dangerous. The strain could kill her. But she did not care. Forgive me, Jake, she whispered, and activated the device. The world turned white. Pain shot through every nerve in her body. Then she was standing on the bridge of the Valiant Dawn, right next to a very shocked Jake. Kira? He stared at her. What are you doing here? Saving you from yourself, she snapped, grabbing the co-pilot controls. You do not get to sacrifice yourself alone. You could have died using that transporter, Jake said, angry and scared. Why would you risk that? Two. For the same reason you are doing this, Kira Lin replied. Because some things are worth the risk. Now stop arguing and help me fly this ship. Together, they guided the Valiant Dawn toward its target. The Scourge flagship loomed ahead of them, massive and terrifying. Weapons fire filled the space around them. One hit would destroy the ship instantly. There, Kira Lin pointed at the tactical display. That section of their hull. The shields are weakest there. I see it, Jake said, adjusting course. 30 seconds. To impact. 20 seconds. Kira Lin counted down. Her hands moved over the controls, rerouting all remaining power to forward momentum. 10 seconds, Jake said. Kira, there is an escape pod in the rear section. We can still... Together, Kira Lin interrupted. We do this together? Or not at all? Jake looked at her, and despite everything, he smiled. Together then. 5 seconds, Kira Lin whispered. At the last possible moment, they activated the transporter again. It was a crazy risk, trying to transport while moving at such high speed. But luck was with them. They vanished, just as the Valiant Dawn smashed into the Scourge flagship. The explosion was massive. It tore the enemy dreadnought apart from the inside, exactly as Jake had planned. Secondary explosions rippled through the Scourge fleet. Without their command ship, the enemy forces fell into chaos. Kira Lin and Jake materialized in the escape pod, tumbling to the floor in a tangle of limbs. They were both alive. Bruised and exhausted, but alive. That was the stupidest thing I have ever seen you do, Jake said breathlessly. You are welcome, Kira Lin replied, equally breathless. They started laughing. Crazy, relieved laughter that came from surviving something impossible. Jake pulled Kira Lin into a tight hug, and she held him just as tightly. Outside the escape pod, the battle was turning. With their flagship destroyed, the Scourge began to retreat. Valkyrian and human ships pursued them, driving them from the system. They had won. Both Jake and Kira Lin spent the next week in the hospital. The multiple transporter jumps had taken a severe toll on Kira Lin's body. Jake had various injuries from the battle, but they were alive, and so was Velkara Prime. The Emperor himself, Torvash, came to visit them. He was an imposing figure, tall and regal in his formal robes, but his eyes were warm as he looked at his daughter. You saved billions of lives, he told Jake. Humanity has earned Velkara's eternal gratitude and friendship. We were just doing our duty, Your Majesty, Jake replied. No, the Emperor said firmly. You did far more than duty required. You sacrificed your ship, risked your life, all for people who had treated you poorly. That is the mark of true honor. He turned to his daughter. And you, my child, you have taught me a valuable lesson. I have been wrong. About humans, we have all been wrong. They are not primitives or barbarians. They are warriors with hearts as brave as any Valkyrian. After the Emperor left, Jake and Kirillin finally had time alone. They sat together on a hospital balcony, watching the sun set over the capital city. The city Jake had saved. What happens now? Jake asked the question that had been hanging between them. I do not know, Kirillin admitted. Our peoples are friends now. True allies. But us, a princess and a captain, that will be complicated. I have never been good at simple, Jake said with a smile. Kirillin laughed. Neither have I, apparently. She took his hand, intertwining their fingers. But I know what I want. I want to face whatever comes next with you. More battles, more challenges, more impossibilities. Together, Jake agreed. I like the sound of that. In the weeks that followed, reconstruction began. Human and Valkyrian crews worked side by side, repairing damage and building new defenses. Lisa was promoted to lieutenant for her bravery. Kyle recovered fully and returned to duty. Amy took command of a new ship, the Valiant Dawn II, built to honor the destroyer that had saved a world. Jake and Kirillin continued working together, planning strategy for the ongoing war against the Scourge. They faced criticism from traditionalists on both sides. Some Valkyrians thought their princess was lowering herself. Some humans thought Jake was forgetting his place, but they did not care. They had found something rare and precious. Understanding between different worlds. Love that bridged the gap between species. Hope that differences could make people stronger, instead of dividing them. One evening, they stood together in a war room, reviewing tactical displays. The war was not over. There would be more battles ahead, more struggles and losses. But as Kirillin's hand rested near Jake's on the console, their fingers almost touching, she felt only determination. They had proven that hatred could be overcome. That prejudice could be defeated not with words, but with actions. The alien princess no longer hated humans. She had learned their true strength, their resilience, their compassion, and she had found her heart won not through grand gestures, but through simple acts of courage and kindness on 100 battlefields. Outside the window, human and Valkyrian ships flew in perfect formation, their differences making them stronger together. And inside the room, two people from different worlds stood side by side, facing an uncertain future with hope and determination. Together,